Here's my warning and experience for all men and women, if it were possible for them to learn. It's a read titled MGTOW, Get Known. In 2013, I lost my job in Australia's mining downturn. I was warned and seen a property decline to follow, so decided to sell and return my family to New Zealand, which I thought was always available with my wife. Otherwise, I'd never have supported her wants by moving to Australia in 2002 to Perth. We came for a holiday to visit her grandparents before they passed away, and she relentlessly encouraged me to move there. I'd seen potential profit compared to New Zealand then, so decided to go for a time, then one day return. Currently in New Zealand, we both have big family and trust inheritances. I had, and still have, job security and debt-free living available, and up to 4 houses fully owned in my family trust. My mum died, so we could have moved in freely, as her house sat vacant for years. Yet my wife's emotional love or triggered hypergamy for the dream home I'd provided clouded her vision, so she refused to see sense or support me. We've since lost the same finances. That's $220,000 profit if she'd supported me selling, to now be equal financial loss of more than $200,000 at her financially foolish hand, with market decline and mortgage payments profiting the bank more than $90,000 in interest. What's more, no capital has been paid off, and what's worse, as the downturn continues, she'll drive us into negative equity where we soon won't be able to sell it for more than what we owe. I've tried to sternly warn her, but she stubbornly, hypergamously hangs on to that house, while the bank and that feminist court ignores me. The court keeps giving her the pussy pass as a complete display of the misery men face there. I've aptly renamed it the feminist court, as they haven't helped me one bit. They've ignored all my applications to get the property sold, to be financially separated from this fool before she bankrupts us both. What's more, she hasn't paid the mortgage at all this year, to allow the arrears to escalate to nearly $27,000. Fortunately, the bank's about to move to finally repossess the property, to give her that equality of being out on her ass as she so deserves. It's so unfortunate, as I'm highly attracted to females by default, as my biological drive to have one for life, to enjoy the company, children and intimacies of marriage. Now, I'm a MGTOW man, as I've fast found 5+ years ago from one woman I could never trust another again in this gynocentric society. Then I found MGTOW on YouTube 2 years ago to relate to it completely. Plus, there's plenty more platforms to find MGTOW creators, like on BitChute. What I want is a functional family unit for mutual benefit of both parties, and the stability for having and raising children. You won't find that today. I now redefine biological as illogical, as I now get how illogical and foolish fellas are to follow his drive and build a bond with any woman. Hypergamy is a woman's fault, but in their defence, women can't help themselves, as their nature is natural. It was kept in check by the patriarchy, but now no longer. It's now unrestrained, with the Western world corrupted state and gynocentric feminist laws that have hijacked the godly marriage covenant to make it a contract with the state by handing the man's God-given family authority to the female, points a gun at his head to hold him financially accountable for her and kids even years after they've split and divorced, without the respect and authority he should have as the provider and head of his family. It's this corrupted state and laws I'm at war with, not women. I love women. They're only taking what's handed to them on a platter, with all the cash and prizes on offer they selfishly select through divorce courts. Women should respect their man and even submit to him, found in Ephesians 5 verse 22 to 24, and there's many other Bible verses to back that up. Also, she's instructed to honour him as her husband and provider, as God made him the logical, sensible, non-emotional thinker to have his authority and freedom to best decide where and how to best provide for and how his family functions. Unfortunately, feminism destroyed this order that works. To quote my Bible commentary on Ephesians 5 verse 22 to 24, it says, "Every well-ordered society rests on two supporting pillars, authority and submission. There must be a head, and there must be obedience to that head. There must be someone in charge of any relationship, and the God-given instruction is man's in command of marriage." End of quote, and fact. Unfortunately today, the female gets all family authority by gynocentric law. Fact. Proof? I've no authority to return my family to New Zealand. Fact. What's more, females know this from childhood, as the feministic narrative is practically brainwashed from birth into all girls. So from the moment she's manipulated her man to get that ring on it, she'll continue to manipulate, coercive control, use shaming tactics to get her way throughout the relationship, etc., until when he's finally had enough to stand his ground on something, by Briefault's law, she'll see no further benefit from him and eject him. She'll then engage gynocentric law to continue getting her way by extracting his resources well after that. That's indentured servitude and slavery, especially financially for men. Also, never get any joint account, mortgage or loan, as if she doesn't agree to sell with you, she gets her way. For my example, in spite of me being the white knighting nice guy, king of cuckoldry, simp of the century, slaving away in stifling heat and humidity, giving her all the love, care, affection and attention I could, providing and doing everything she wanted, while foolishly thinking this would show I loved her? Wrong. She got all she could, then ejected me for what she felt was a better deal, with their usual monkey branching tactics to leech their lazy existence off another host and the state. That's why multitudes of men say, "She's not yours, it's just your turn." I've found that fact. It's made so easy by modern social media for her to have a string of sexually addicted, thirsty simps circling in the friend zone, orbiting for a piece of that pussy. In my case, the one she swung to is a sexual predator and was also working his way to my oldest daughter. Not to mention my ex had a long-standing affair with my mate while pregnant with her, that I foolishly forgave them for. I should have divorced her then, as would have been far better off. Fortunately, my daughter woke up from her mother's brainwashed state of hate and never talking to me, to suddenly begin talking and living permanently with me. This fortunately commenced before sex or rape happened from her mother's boyfriend. My middle daughter had previously decided to have shared time with both parents, as she wasn't so brainwashed against me, and was old enough to stand up to her mother. Now my oldest won't even talk with her mum because of the betrayal, but thankfully learnt of my love for my girls. Shockingly, their mother knew of the abuse, yet excused it, and didn't defend my three daughters, as she likely didn't want to lose him, or really his provisions, for her. My youngest daughter also came to me on the same day as her oldest abused sister, as she was not only afraid of the creep, but also her mother had made her a prisoner in that house, as she'd recently run away to me once before, and as a punishment her mother even further restricted her seeing me and continued refusing to ever allow overnight stays with me. This was clearly because she was a tool for her mother for child support. This running started the court recovery orders for her from the ex, and she continued to run until that femtarded, misguided magistrate finally accepted and ordered shared care by admitting she was voting with her feet. Now she's finally able, as has by her own choice, 1 week with each parent, and really that court didn't help one bit. She had to repeatedly run to make it happen herself. I had invested everything in my ex, done heaps and high hopes she'd honour promises she'd made to convince me to marry her, yet she swiftly pulled that rug out from under my feet, only after I'd built her that a biggest, flashiest, 5+ bedroom, best house in the whole suburb. That's even confirmed by our real estate agent. She then said, and I quote, "There comes a time in a woman's life when enough's enough, and I've had enough. There's no way I'm ever having any more children." I was gobsmacked. My high hopes were dashed, as one of her fake promises was, we needed a bigger home to be open to having more kids. To review, I wanted a big family. She didn't. Yet she still wanted me to marry her. I said no. So she agreed to a big family to convince me to marry her. This was another lie amongst other false promises of the same. I fast learnt about female hypergamy, as she loved that house, not her husband. Many a man say, a woman cannot love a man, she can only love his social status, his resources, and his financial net worth. I've found that fact. She also lied that she'd honour me when we had a disagreement, as she'd also promised that as my final question and condition to convince me to marry her. Now that makes her the biggest liar on the face of the planet, and what's more, she's never acknowledged she'd ever made that promise to date. My attempt to return to New Zealand included a full family relocation package, all expenses paid by my awesome New Zealand employer, Hall's Refrigerated Transport, driving their big rigs with reefers. Also, all our families are both there, including hers, that recently moved back to New Zealand from here in Perth. She still refused. In desperation, as my last-ditch attempt, I took the job and led the way. I called her up once there and pleaded with her to sell and follow. She called me an idiot with rocks in my head that was going about loving my life, my wife and children the wrong way, and then verbally divorced me by saying that our marriage was over. She then took legal possession of my home, lied to the court and brainwashed our kids that I'd abandoned them as a deadbeat dad, as tools for her unbelievably stupid, selfish way, and taxed me to the max for totally unpredicted child support to the tune of $1,200 per month. She also has full gynocentric rights to return our kids to Australia till they're 18 if they ever went with me. I've been stressed at the max and suicidal twice from her destruction. First time from a failed business that I'd foolishly supported her with, that also left us with a huge debt of $100,000 on top of the mortgage of another $280,000 to make a massive $380,000 on my single low income. Also, her shaming tactics were, find a better job. She lumped this on me as she refused to get a job or accept any responsibility for the debt she'd caused, even after all the friends and church family I'd organised to encourage her. They answered all her objections competently to finally corner her. Then out came the truth, as she admitted she didn't feel it was right to get a job, which was closely followed by, I don't want to get a job. The second suicidal situation was when I led the way to New Zealand. By refusing to follow, she thrust me into total parental alienation with this unexpected full family authority the gynocentric government gave her, and power to use our kids as weapons of war to extract my funds from another country. I just couldn't cope with the grief. I'd made plans to drive head-on into an oncoming truck on my way to work in the early hours of the morning, but the only thing that kept me hanging on by a thin thread was my love and absolute resolve to not leave my kids with a wicked witch like her. I persevered to finish my contract and return to Perth purely for my children. I've accepted I'll be controlled by her to live in a country I currently deem and seem unfit for my family, and be financially destroyed by her as the only way to have contact with my girls and be their dad, as she refused to even let them visit me while I was in New Zealand. Now I'm back in Perth, and they are now living with me. It's much to her disgust, as she now has to work, as wants to keep that child support gravy train going for that mortgage. I'm fighting back by living a minimalist lifestyle with wages under $24,000 per annum to evade it and avoid feeding welfare to other solo mothers and welfare bludgers. Fortunately, child support won't tax my pay, as my low income's viewed as necessary to survive on, and tax is minimal if nothing. For most, this forces financial hardship, but fortunately I was raised that way to easily do so. I'll continue till welfare and society crashes. We men take charge, strip all women of their unearned, undeserved rights, especially voting, and never give them back to allow them to screw us over ever again. With work, I was needed more than necessary, so earned too much last year, so I told child support that I'm not paying another cent till I'm given full family authority to return to New Zealand. I told them authority goes with responsibility. You'll never again force my financial responsibility for her without my rightful authority. They legally stated they'll tax my wages for her if necessary. They now are. I'll make a bold statement. All women should be in obedience to their fathers first, then their husband. Biblical fact. You won't find that in today's gynocentric Western world or in the churches, as I fast learnt the hard way how hypergamy and feminist laws work. So what's happened to me has only made it my mission and qualified quest to warn all men, especially young men that have never been married, to never get married or into any form of relationship with any woman whatsoever till they've learnt about hypergamy, Briefolt's law and female nature. So when that's combined with family, state and gynocentric law, that men run a mile from marriage de facto or even cohabitation with women, as it's simply far too dangerous, and till that feminist court and child support goes broke, with no married men left for females to financially abuse and alienate from their kids. I couldn't have asked for a more despicable, destructive, wicked woman to wake me up from my blue-pilled simping slumber and highlight hypergamy perfectly. When I married, I loosely knew of feminism, so got her to promise those things, but found out the hard way you cannot trust a woman's words, only ever their actions. The majority of marriages end in divorce and financial and suicidal destruction for men, including Christian ones like mine. I've come to the inescapable conclusion that women need male authority to control their hypergamy or face their unbridled destructibility. End of story. When women bite the hand that feeds them, when we've had enough of the abuse, eventually we'll bite back. I'm not biting back in a confrontational way, but by walking away and working on taking as many men out of harm's way till women wake up from wondering where all the good guys have gone, why, and do something about it. Feminism's fueled females' hypergamous nature to financially abuse a bloke's biological drive, as the male sex drive is researched to be 9.4 times stronger than women's, and they know it. Women are selfishly abusing blokes' biological drive through marriage and relationships that wind up in divorce courts while they alienate dads from their kids, while also using children as weapons of war, and well after they're done honouring him as her provider. What's worse is women are killing men by driving them to suicide, and those statistics are staggering. Not to mention over 1 billion abortions to date, as women are also the biggest serial killers by far. That's more deaths than the 2 world wars and all the wars since, and women have been aborting for a far shorter time. Yes, a man can encourage keeping or condone killing their child, but women have full authority and final say in either keeping or killing by aborting their baby. So, if this is the example that this so-called Christian has set, she set it for the sisterhood. She's shown they legally can and are all highly likely lying, deceiving, selfish chameleons of corruption at heart. She selfishly, ruthlessly, heartlessly, brutally screwed me and our kids over to the umpteenth degree for the love of a house, not her husband or her kids. I've since found this is common, as I've now met multitudes, if not millions of men worldwide online that have suffered the same fate to varying degrees. I hope to help as many a man to understand they are foolish to play the dating and relationship game, as that game is gynocentrically rigged. Even though it's denying, as they're abusing our primary biological drive, we're best not to play a rigged game. Warning all males, be red-pilled. Warning all men, go MGTOW.